Let's discuss what the president is up against during his visit here to communist China. John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, joins me from Washington. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being here. I want to get your reaction to James's piece and this mark about where we are on communism around the world.
Well, I think the Chinese model obviously continues. They once called it communism with Chinese characters. But right now, Xi Jinping, according to all reporting, has as much power in China as Mao Zedong did at the height of his rule in the 1950s. So as a justification for authoritarianism, not as an ideology bringing egalitarianism, but what it has always been once it's gotten power, an ideology of brutality, the Chinese are still doing pretty well. Remember Orwell's famous description of the Communist Party in power as a boot stomping on the face of humanity forever. That's how Xi Jinping maintains his power. It's not as visible as it is before because the instruments of terror are very well known.
You know, Ambassador, if you look at a map of the countries under communist rule right now, President Trump is going to visit two of them on this trip here. You've got, obviously, China here, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam. Here's the president in South Korea yesterday, our time.
America's men and women in uniform have given their lives in the fight against Nazism, imperialism, communism, and terrorism. America does not seek conflict or confrontation, but we will never run from it. History is filled with discarded regimes that have foolishly tested America's resolve.
What'd you make of that speech?
I thought it was an excellent speech, clear, strong, Reagan-esque in many respects, and I think it squared the circle that the president had to in South Korea, which is very divided on how to handle North Korea, by making it clear he would do what he needed to do to stop North Korea's nuclear weapons program, but hoping to keep South Korea very much on side and citing the cooperation of the two countries since the North Korean invasion in 1950. Obviously, his other audience was China, where you are now, and I think the meetings on Thursday in Beijing, certainly trade will be involved, but the meetings on North Korea will be the most important meetings of this entire Asia trip.
You know, I want to get your thoughts about how now, in retrospect, the media overall looks at communism. Recently, I saw a New York Times opinion piece, and it was about how did women fare in China's communist revolution. And it said, quote, "For all its flaws, the communist revolution taught Chinese women to dream big." And our friend Mark Thiessen wrote a response to that and said, "Good God, communist revolution killed 65 million in China." Is there kind of a recasting of communism as history goes by here?
Look, the New York Times has been wrong on communism for a full century. This is the newspaper that sent Walter Duranty to the Ukraine and got a Pulitzer Prize for reporting that somehow missed the famine caused by dekulakization in Ukraine, killing millions of people, starvation and execution. And when Stalin died, in the New York Times obituary, it said, well, he did have these show trials in the 1930s and purges and executions, and it then said, but those who survived his terrorism came to hail Stalin as a great leader. I mean, it's no wonder the New York Times doesn't get it today. Why should they change course?
Ambassador Bolton, as always, thanks for your comments.
Thank you, Brett.